Welcome to ATG, the podcast, and I'm very privileged today to be talking to Georgios Papadopoulos. Georgios, thank you for joining.
Thank you, and I'm honored.
So, Georgios, let's start with your background. Clearly, you're from Greece. Whereabouts in Greece were you born?
Oh, I was born in Thessaloniki, which is the second largest city in Greece, and I studied there in the math department before I moved to the US to NYU to get a PhD in computer science.
So, your first degree was maths,
Yes.
and was maths your choice? Is that what did you want to be when you were at school?
Oh no, my first choice when I was in school actually was physics. I wanted to study astrophysics. But then I went to work in the summer. You take an exam in Greece and then you join in September. In the summer, I worked in a camp, and there I met a physicist who told me that it was in the physics department, they had a lot of mandatory classes and labs, and instead the math department didn't have any. And these math students never went to any classes. And that's when I switched to math. and I took advantage of it liberally. I didn't attend any classes at all the first 2 years of the math department. And the second year, actually, I didn't even go to take the books. I when took the books at the end of the year. We didn't have semesters in Greece. We had whole years. And I took them a week before the exams. And somehow I was always going pretty well. And then the third year, actually, there was a transformation when I had a professor that came from the US, and he taught 2 classes in computer science, kind of computer science. One was numerical analysis, and the other, he named it something, but he was teaching us actually computer language. And I was fascinated by it. And I decided to become a computer scientist at the time, which was, of course, impossible in Greece because we didn't have a computer science department. That was one thing back in 1983. And the university had a mainframe with 5 punch card machines, and you would write the program, you would give it to the people, and they would the next day they would tell you that you had a typo. So, and then you had to submit all over again. So it was actually impossible. Eventually, we tried to, with a friend of mine, we tried to buy a computer of our own, which was too expensive at the time. But we found a computer in a physics lab. And we proceeded to learn first to type, and then, because we didn't know even how to type, and then to program little things. And then in the 4th year of school, we went to this great professor from the university, from the US, and we asked him to design a class for us, which he did. It was pretty bold. It was never before done, and which he did. And he designed a class that was for the full year. We only had to do 6 projects, 6 actually pretty tough projects. And during doing these projects, we discovered we had absolutely nothing else. He would not give us any instruction, nothing, any help of any sort. And we discovered also a stack of books, computer science books, at this physics lab. And it belonged to actually a professor who was previously a physicist, who was previously at CERN. We learned from that. We figured out the solution to the problems. We learned from that. And we actually gave the GRE exam in order to come to the US as a graduate student. We took the GRE in computer science instead of taking it in math. Math was acceptable. But we thought we will show them that we actually do know computer science, even though we have no computer science classes in our degree, and we were accepted at NYU and other universities, but we picked NYU, and we finished our PhD, which was a great thing that we did. And then when I started the company, this other guy, who was my friend from forever, became my first employee. And he still works at Atypon, which is great.
So, so essentially, it was your whole degree was self-directed learning.
Yes, it was self-directed learning, and I think that's the best, the best way to do it. If you find your calling, then you devote your entire life onto it. I mean, I was leaving home at 8 o'clock and returning midnight because we were programming all the time. That's what we were doing, 7 days a week. The university building was actually locked up during the weekends. And this professor, the physicist, who was also the dean, he gave us the keys to the school so that we could go into it. And by the way, we were protecting the secret, which is there is an available Apple IIe at the time in his office. We were protecting it like gold because we didn't want anybody else to take time on it. So we would actually do all kinds of subterfuges when we would try to get into his office because we didn't want anybody to see us getting into the office. It was quite a thing. Anyway, it was a successful career, and then we came to the US. We were pretty successful in our studies. We aced everything.
And what was the subject of your PhD?
Well, the subject actually was interesting. I was fascinated by compilers, transformers essentially, compilers and data flow analysis. And that proved crucial down the line for the first journal that went online in a very strange way. So that was one thing. My PhD was in compilers, data flow analysis for logic programming languages. It was an interesting subject at the time. Logic, Prolog was, supposed to be the AI engine of the future. So that was the, symbolic, essentially, computing and all of these things. So I was early into that. And I was fascinated by, making things efficient. Because that was one of the problems of adopting basically symbolic computing. And of course, as every computer science graduate, even now I think math and computer science, physics, they all write their thesis in LaTeX, which was the second important thing that helped actually down the line. It's very interesting, as Job said, you can only connect the dots looking backwards. You don't know whatever you're doing at the time that is going to become important later in your life. So I had to, do everything in LaTeX, and then I was very good in programming during university, essentially, and I was doing transformers.
So I believe at some point you won a scholarship.
Yes, the scholarship actually was from day one. So I got a few scholarships. So when I came into the country, I came as a Fulbright Scholar, which was had the repercussions down the line for me afterwards. But I came as a Fulbright Scholar, which actually was very small. It was just giving you $5,000 for the first year. It wasn't. It was more of an honorary thing that you were selected as one of the best that Greece basically has to offer. And the university, the computer science department, gave me full research assistantship. I didn't have actually any tutoring duties, any teaching duties, or correcting anything. Because I was already doing research as an undergrad in logic programming back in days. And then I got another full scholarship actually from the economics department. I was building multiplayer games for them, economic games. They needed to simulate with real players in real time, playing against each other in real time, different economic theories. And they had a local network at the time and computers on the network, but there was no foundation, no nothing really to program these multiplayer games at the time. That was 86. So I created one of the platform, and then I was on that platform. I was simulating, whatever games I was programming on top of the platform, whatever games they were asking us to do. And that was important because they were spending real money with players. So if there was a bug, they were out some money, and then it did happen sometimes. Not often.
Gosh. So you finished the PhD, and I believe that your military service came after that. Yes?
Yes. I was a Fulbright Scholar, as I said, so one of the requirements of the Fulbright Scholarship for all the $5,000 that they gave us was that we have to go back for 2 years to our country to contribute to our country. And in Greece, of course, we have military duty. So I joined the Navy, or I was assigned to the Navy, and which was great. I actually absolutely wanted that, and I actually wanted to be in the submarines, but they didn't allow any any draftees to be in the submarines. So they actually, and then I had, it was very interesting. I had, of course, a computer science PhD. I had a math degree, and they put me actually as a secretary to the commander-in-chief of a Navy school, and also teaching 4 hours of a day of English, because I also had a degree that in Greece, I had acquired a degree in Greece that would allow me to, it was at the level that would allow me to teach English. So I was teaching English, which actually was a great experience. Not so great for my students, unfortunately, because I was kind of harsh. And in the Navy, if you don't have certain grades, then you cannot actually go out. You have to stay in. And so all my students were actually staying in pretty much. So, but they did learn English. It was very important for them to learn English because all the manuals of the ships and stuff like that, everything is written in English. So I was very insistent that they have to know very good English.
Mm. And did you enjoy your Navy career?
I was very bored because I was away from my home. I was away from my family. I had just married. I was away from everybody. So because I was very bored, I was conducting different things. I was coming up with different things to take away the boredom. And one of the things was finding out what is my limit of going out without sleep, of going around without sleep. And so what I was doing, actually, I was an officer. I was a petty officer. And I would go to so I didn't have any guard duty. But to make myself stay awake, I would go and replace basically whoever guard was there it's always 2 hours. And then when the next one would come to replace me, I would say, no, go sleep. I'll just stay here. so I was going through this, and then the day I was doing everything that I needed to do. And then, the next night I would do exactly the same. So I would go there 24 hours. So I found out that I could go out without sleep for 72 hours, for 3 days, for 2 nights and essentially 3 days. And then, I would stop functioning. I would stop being functional. I would just start, dropping, weighing off. So. That also proved very important. That's an important detail later on for scholarly publishing, interestingly enough. That is the most important detail of my Navy duty. I did other things, but that was probably the most extreme I had done. And yeah.
Did the Navy give you any insights into how to manage organizations?
Yes, the Navy did tell me how not to manage. So it was a very interesting experience. The Navy taught me what not to do to motivate people. And perhaps some things that, I should do, but of course, discipline is one thing that that you learn, and you understand why. And I could understand why. I came from a family that was always, very, very always very high value on discipline, and duty and all of these things. But the important thing was how did you actually motivate people to do things, and how, what happens when people are unmotivated. So it was actually very important in terms of management and leadership skills. So there are good commanders, obviously, and bad commanders. And I think you learn a lot more from the bad ones about what to avoid. And because the good ones usually do things pretty well and you almost don't notice. And that's pretty much what goes on with leadership. When things, go well, everybody takes credit. They don't realize that the person who was, at top is doing what he's doing, and everybody, shares credit. And when things go bad, that's when, the leadership weaknesses are revealed.
Yes, I only remember the good companies a long time after the event.
Right. Right. You appreciate them much later. You appreciate the leaders much later.
Absolutely. So you finished the Navy, and you then went into the software.
And then I came back to the U.S. I had some ideas to do a business in Greece, but there was no financing back then in Greece. There was no VCs in 1990, 94 actually, when I finished the Navy. And I had already worked from 90 when I graduated to 92. I worked for a company in Silicon Valley. I had 18 months of practical training that I could do on my visa, which I did in company. When I came back, they wanted me back, but I didn't want to go join them. And I joined a new startup at the time, WAIS, by Brewster Kahle, who you also interviewed. And at the time, because at the time the web was coming up, of course, the internet always existed in the universities. We all knew the internet, but the web was coming up, and WAIS was building these websites. So I worked on several websites with Brewster, and eventually came up to work for the first scholarly publishing website. And it was kind of fortuitous because I had joined for less than a month maybe, and I had already worked on a couple of sites. The thing that always bothered me was that I'd never built a website by itself. I was always, solving some particular problems on different things. So Brewster called me one day, and he said, "Let's go for a walk." And Brewster had many good things as a manager, as a leader, I would say. So we went for a walk, and he said, "Well, we have this customer, which is Stanford University, who are doing a journal for their first for a publisher, and this is going to be the first journal that goes online." Okay, I mean, everything that we were doing at the time was the first. I mean, we were doing Dow Jones with satellite, acquiring satellite data. I worked on the first Intel site that was using HTML. I worked on the first, we were working on Encyclopedia Britannica. We were working on New York Times. I mean, there were big sites. There were so many firsts. I cannot even imagine what it was. And he said, "Well, we put two teams. I put two guys that worked on it for 6 months that couldn't do it. Then I put these other two guys and couldn't do it. And do you think you can do that?" And I said, "Okay, I'll look at it." And he said, well, they have a big conference, and we told them that it's ready, or almost ready, and they are very excited to show it, to show the first journal online. And he said, you don't need to do the whole journal, just a few articles, the whole issue, just a few articles, just to show them that we have something. And of course, the problem back then was that we had these old browsers, right? Mosaic, Netscape 0.9. I don't remember now what it was. And it was early 95, I think. 1995, I don't know. Because of my son had just been born. And he said, the problem is of all these math symbols and all of these things. So we need to do this. And I said, okay, very well. When is this conference? In 3 days. So so it's in 3 days. Okay, so I looked at what they had, and basically they didn't have much. They had just found a master's thesis by a Greek student in UK, in Leeds, from what I remember, who was doing a transformation of HTML to LaTeX, if I remember correctly, or something like that. Now we were getting HTML. Imagine that we were getting HTML. So basically I had to write, no, he was doing some transformation he was doing, I don't remember. So I had to write basically a transformer from HTML to, I think it's LaTeX. No, I had to do a transformer from HTML to LaTeX. Yeah, it was LaTeX to HTML that it was doing. But it was just not doing it, very well. And so I had to do a transformer from HTML to LaTeX. And then I took his tool, but then I went and modified the LaTeX source code to output the images and create PNGs out of the formulas and symbols of math symbols and stuff like that. And then I would stick them back into the HTML. So I worked on it for 3 days, and voila, and 2 nights. And at the end, when I was just falling, asleep on my chair, it was all done. It was done. I went to sleep, and then 24 hours later, my wife woke me up, and she said, "What have you done?" And I said, "I don't know. What do you mean?" He said, "Some people from Stanford are calling you, and they invited you to a dinner." So what have you done? I'm like, I don't know. I did this journal. And apparently it was the first journal. It was the Journal of Biological Chemistry. It was the first journal existing journal that went online, full text HTML. And I continued supporting it. A month later, Brewster actually sold the company to American Online, which wanted to shut down all the projects. So I basically continued supporting it. And then based on that, I started my own company, which is another whole story. So Atypon started as a company that was doing basically transformations of SGML that we were getting from the publishers to HTML, to full text HTML, but for scientific articles. So it was basically, I was the right person at the right time with all the right skills. I had the transformer. I could do transformers very, very fast. I knew LaTeX very well, and I could program for 3 days without sleep. That was basically the formula. So that's how it worked out, and that's how the first journal went online. And after that, grew to become a big platform. Actually, at the end, we had like 500 people, 350 in product development engineers, and more than half of the publications in the world publishing on our platform.
So from the very first software project you were involved in, you were offering a delivery date before you'd built the product.
Yeah, that was that was the case of so we were doing only transformations, right? So we were not doing the platform yet. And so I hired a salesperson with a little money that I was getting. I hired a salesperson, and to get me more publishers to do transformations of whatever. We moved to typesetting files because the HTML we were getting was pretty low quality. So we moved from typesetting to full text HTML. And I hired a salesperson to help me sell to more publishers rather than all, because I had only one customer at the time, Stanford, which became Highware Press, by the way. And he arranged a meeting with Academic Press down in San Diego. So the night before the meeting, I looked up at their website just out of curiosity. It was like, oh my God, it was horrible. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. But so we go to the next morning, fly down to San Diego, and we give a presentation about our services. And at the end of the meeting, I remember Larry Alexander, Metzner was the big guy, VP at the time. Very nice guys. And I said, by the way, can I tell you a few things about your website? And he said, sure, go ahead. And I proceeded to tell them my vision of how a website should be done. I had already worked on websites using WAIS, and I had developed a vision. WAIS never went with that. And I had also developed a tool back then, a prototype of XSL, what would later be known as XSL, because it was just basically, at the time, we were basically, for every website, we would take a piece of code. If you want, for example, a registration or login page, everything was using print statements inside the code. So to actually do another registration page for another registration site, you had to take that code and change it and make it to the, sorry about that, make it compile it all over again and do all of these things and go through debugging. And every time you wanted to change something, you had to change code, which is crazy, instead of actually changing a template. So I created essentially a templating system. So that was, so I had a vision of agent-based computing and distributed modules and all of these things and administration. So I gave them that vision. I didn't even have slides. So this was less than slideware. Total paperware. And they said, when are you leaving? I said, well, we have a flight actually in an hour. He said, can you change your flight and go have lunch and come back after lunch? And we want to hear more about this. And okay, so we had the lunch, we came back, and I said, tell us more. Tell us what you would do. And I tell them what I would do. And they said, by the way, we have an RFP out. We agree. Our site sucks. So our site sucks. We agree. And we want to change it. And we have an RFP out. We send it out to 32 organizations, companies. Are you interested in receiving an RFP? And at the time, you have to understand that we were like 5 people, including my salesperson. I hired my friend who was a PhD in computer science. I had hired another PhD from NYU. And I don't remember, some other PhD as well. No, yeah, I had another PhD, but not from NYU. So it was all 4 PhDs and a salesperson. Who also became a PhD in business eventually. It's crazy, but anyway.
This goes against one of the fundamental rules of corporate sales, in that you don't start by telling the organization what's wrong with what they're doing. Usually, it doesn't work.
I guess doesn't work, but it did work in this occasion. So I guess they were eager to hear, and they liked the vision. They liked the vision that I was offering, especially about business models and how you can model different business models. And so we receive the RFP, we respond, we get through the first stage, the second stage, and at the end we were against IBM. And unlikely of all unlikeliest events, Atypon won. And that's how we built, because we wouldn't have the funding, we built basically the first platform on Academic Press's dollar, for which I will always be very thankful.
Yeah. Did you have any idea at that time that this could be replicable across many companies?
No, no, I didn't have an idea at the time that it would be replicable. But the one thing that I had was, and I couldn't do it when I was doing with Academic Press. It was actually interesting. I had an idea of the software as a service. Basically, when I created transformation software, everybody wanted to buy the software, license the software, and pay me a fee, an annual fee for maintenance, and I was against it because I realized that we need more steady revenue. And so I switched. I told them that I don't do that, and I would just sell the software by the page. So they were sending me the documents. I would do the transformations and charge them by the page. So I created essentially the SaaS model. Before there was a SaaS model. SaaS model came in 2001, I think, but I had it in 96, 95 actually. So, interesting with Academic Press, it was not SaaS. It became SaaS when Blackwell came along, and that's when Blackwell gave us the money to buy the hardware because we didn't have the money to buy the hardware. So Blackwell provided the money to buy the hardware, and we bought the hardware with the agreement that we will also be able to use it for other customers. And that's what we did. And that's how we became a platform. Basically, we became a real platform in 2003. Mm-hmm. And that's when we had our first other publisher. Crosser had already come as well, and we had basically Annual Reviews, who was one of the publishers who was the first to come onto the Atypon platform. And that's when the cataclysmic event happened at the end of 2003, that Academic Press was acquired by Elsevier, and Annual Reviews came to Atypon, and Highware basically ended our contract. So I lost 70% of my revenue in the beginning of 2003. And as I said to my employees, no problem. I mean, we were always kind of very frugal, and we were putting all the money in the bank. We were not spending much. And I said, nobody gets fired. I cut the salaries of myself and my wife completely. And I had to find another way of growing my family and living with my family, and which I did. It was investments basically, and then we proceeded to grow the company and grow it out of it. And by 2004, we were profitable again. So it was incredible. It was an incredible story. Lasted until 2016, when 2015 actually, Wiley came to ask us to acquire us, and eventually I agreed at the end of 2016.
So this low point at 2003, how many staff did you have at that time?
I had 12. I had actually 13. I know, because I called my father, who was a small business person, and asked him how many employees he had at his peak, and he said 12, and I said, I have 13. I never felt I surpassed him, actually. True stories. I never felt I was able to surpass him, to do what he did. He was one of my models of business people.
So you found yourself running a company, but you didn't go through the standard sort of management training or an MBA or anything like that. I mean, did you feel that you needed that kind of that kind of input?
No, I didn't find it important, frankly. And I understand how business is taught in business schools, and maybe I'm full of it. But I think you can learn everything on your own. And I think it's more of a, now, it doesn't mean that I was a good business person. I had to grow, and I had to read a few books. I did read a few books, and I did find weaknesses in myself. And I realized that I was the one holding the company back. So I had to, I hit all the points that some business book talk about, the points that you hit, the points of growth that you hit, that you basically, the manager, the leader has to grow in order to grow the company. So I did hit all of those, but after the first one, which is 12 people, by the way, because 12 people is the limit of what you can manage in a flat structure. After that point, which you go up and down, and it's actually very interesting. After that point, I was aware, and I was able to grow so that the company would continue to grow.
The initial success of your company was down to your remarkable skills at programming, the ability to write transformers. But so at what point did you realize that it wasn't your programming that was making the company work?
Oh, very early on. Yeah, I mean, 6 months. I mean, I was, it was very interesting. All these many years of computer science education, and I only programmed for 2 years in my life. Maybe 18 months plus less than a year, 8 months then, and then another 6 months. So yeah, less than 3 years total, I think. It was very soon that I realized that, I mean, I was great at programming. I was a better programmer than anybody I was hiring, but the company needed more than that. And I could just do, the other functions, including sales, but product management, product development, essentially, and architecture was more important than me writing code. So I gave up on code very, very fast, which was something I loved before, but I had to do so for the good of the company and for the good of the people who were working there. That's once you have people working for you, you have responsibilities. You have, their wives and their mortgages are on top of you.
Even though you started at a very, if you like, a fortunate time, it was the beginning of the internet, and you could take advantage, and that still doesn't explain your incredible success. In that, as you said earlier on, at one point you were building websites for sort of more than half the publishers. Or how do you explain Atypon's astonishing rise?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because at every point, I was recognizing what was the problem and solving the main problem. So one of the main problems, first of all, is efficiency, quality and efficiency. So I realized that basically there were three things. In the beginning, I realized that there were three things that a company offers. One is efficiency, like low cost, essentially. You can go with low cost, you can go with high quality, and you can go with great customer service. And you can have 2 out of 3. You cannot have all 3. So if you have high price and high, customer service, high quality and high customer service, you cannot have a low price. That's kind of very difficult, let's put it this way. It can be achieved eventually, but not right away. So you have to know what to focus on. And what I focused on in the beginning is quality of software and low price. How to make essentially everything very efficient. Not low price in terms of I price my software lower, I had margins, good margins, but the question for me was, where do you put your focus? So I put my focus on engineering, more engineers. And the interesting thing that I did was I created an administrative tool so that I didn't have to do the customer service. Essentially, I outsourced the customer service back to my customers. This was essentially the efficiency that I created. And it was also better for my customers in the sense that they didn't have to interact with a customer service person to do things on their behalf. The way I was talking about is, how would you feel if instead of using Microsoft Word to write a document, you tell somebody what you want to write, and then he writes it, and then you check if he wrote it correctly, and then you send the corrections, and then he does his corrections, and then you have to review it again and again, and all of that loop. So I made that essentially more efficient. So I put my resources, my engineering resources, on creating a better administrative tool and a better, and better technology. And although we were 5 people when Highware was 50 or 60 or 70, we were able to compete that way. And then when we grew, I realized that the next problem was all the customer requests that were coming in. And that is the problem that big platforms with many, many, many customers are facing. They're getting all these requests for changes, and all of them are urgent. And one of the reasons is, of course, everybody wants to, do something that to differentiate from all the others also. So all of them are different, by the way. And all of them come, interestingly enough, in the last 3 months of the year, because they have been allocated the budget, and then they fool around for the first 9 months, and then they need to spend that budget in the last 3 months. Guess what that creates, right? So I created essentially a services model, a dedicated services model that solved this problem. That was what basically was the problem that Highware, and other competitors of mine were hitting. They were hitting a ceiling that basically it was becoming so complex. Everything was becoming so complex that they couldn't move forward. They couldn't improve the platform. So I realized that I was going to hit the same ceiling, and I created the dedicated services model. And that basically doubled our revenues in 2 years, and made life easier, more calm for the engineers, and for the publishers more predictable. So finding the problem and figuring out how to solve it, finding the problem that hinders your growth, and figuring out how to solve it is the important thing. And then there were other things I was trying to do, because I realized that all of this basically work that we had done was not good for science itself. So I tried to make amends, or basically change course, and do things the way, create essentially a better experience for the user. Because up to that point, we were focused on how to create essentially, how to take care of the needs of the publishers. But we never thought so much, obviously you're thinking, but we never took the user's point of view. How does the user want to use all these websites? Essentially what we created was a wrong thing. We essentially became a balkanization of science. You had journals in publisher websites, all of them different, all of them with a different set of features, with a different set of interfaces, with a different set of demands of the user, registration, authentication everywhere. If you want notifications from 5 different journals that belong to 5 different publishers, you had to go register in all of them. You had to do all these kinds of things. So I tried to create essentially a suite of services that would, because the publishers, of course, would not allow any organization to aggregate their content. They were very, very, very much against it. I tried to create what the first CEO of Academic Press called distributed aggregation. He already, Academic Press back in 95 was way ahead. No, actually, I met them in 98. was way ahead. And the CEO of Academic Press, who sold the company to Elsevier, he was a Belgian. Peter was his first name. Sorry, I blank now. I can find it, but he created the term distributed aggregation. He already had realized the problem of the balkanization, and he said we need distributed aggregation. So the publisher doesn't give control, but still the user has a smooth experience as he navigates from website to website and all of this. But of course, this diminishes the value of the websites, the value of what Atypon was actually building, right? Because you have now all these services are done at a level above the websites, outside the websites. But I was okay with that. Wiley, not so much. So that vision never materialized. I mean, we did create these tools, but they didn't have the support, the internal support. And although we launched them, they didn't succeed. And generally, these tools, the distributed aggregation, with a few exceptions, has not succeeded. The exception is Google Scholar, for example, where if you do a search, you do a search in Google Scholar. But there's few other, maybe the metrics, the old metrics is another one. But there's very few examples that have succeeded, and they don't offer essentially enough value for the users. They don't offer enough value on top of the website. If I had if I could do things now, I would do them differently. And basically the models of these exist in the world. Look at the music publishing, for example. Songs are in different platforms like Spotify, right? Look at the movies. Again, there is many platforms. For example, for independent movies, there is different platforms, especially in Europe, that I know. And then, of course, there's the big platforms here. Again, the situation in the movies is not so clear because now it's going towards balkanization. Disney doesn't license its content to other platforms, and Warner will probably do the same, start doing the same. And so they're moving from a place of actually licensing their content to these big platforms, and then these platforms competing with each other with different business models, with different innovation. For attention and revenue from the users, and they can have different business models. They now move into balkanization, which is not helpful for the users, but especially is not helpful for scholarly users. It's one thing to say, okay, if I need to see a movie, I have to find the platform, and I have to be sure that I'm a subscriber in that platform to see that particular movie. Boggles the mind, but it's okay. But in science, everything is interconnected through the references. So you need to go to this other website, and suddenly you're in a totally different environment. So the way I would do it is I would basically create these big online libraries and competing libraries. And then the publishers would license the content to these libraries. And I think this is a time that is a good time for making this change right now in the publishing world. I think the publisher models have developed to the point that it does make sense. So it doesn't make sense for, there is no place, in my view, for companies like Atypon in the future.
You mentioned Google Scholar, but of course there's two other areas where this kind of aggregation has taken place, and both of them with question marks over them. One is the sort of LLMs, the sort of the Gen AI, which is pulling together all sorts of content, and the other is the pirate sites like Sci-Hub and Anna's Archive, which are doing de facto exactly what you describe.
Yes, and it tells you that there is a need. It's a proof of the need that exists. And preprints is another one, quasi thing, if you think about it. So there is a need out there. And the business model right now is reverting. I think the reason it happened the way it happened, the balkanization, is because the publishers were the owners of the content, and they wanted to essentially, ownership of the content and reselling of the content was very, very important. Now there is, publishers have become essentially service organizations to researchers and research organizations. Okay, so essentially they are selling both the author fees, they are selling services like editorial, and the brand of the journal, which is very important, and I think that will continue being important. And other services, of course, the typesetting, all of these things, the menial things that they do, but which are important, the figures, all of these things that, a publisher does. And those are covered by the author fees. And once they have actually the author fees paid, okay, there's no incentive to them to spend on putting things on a website. They might as well give it away for free for other websites to publish it and try to figure out how to make money out of it.
You mentioned preprints.
As long as the agreement would be, you have to give it away. Okay, it has to be presented. Okay, full text, and then you figure out what kind of value you want to add, and how do you do your what's your business model? It may be surveillance economy, it may be anything, and then and then we're out of it. We're out of this game. They're spending money on good money on websites, not particularly huge money, but they do spend money on websites, and they could basically save that money.
So do you think the trend towards open science and away from the sort of publisher control of articles is a good thing then for scholarly publishing?
I think open science is a good thing. I think a lot of the things that they're talking about is absolutely a good thing. There is one thing I don't agree with, or I'm worried about, let's put it this way, is the way it is assumed it will be financed. Okay, it's the financing and who does this that is, to me, the important thing. Okay, the implication in many of these presentations is that the government pays for it. And it's easy to fall into this trap because the idea is that, well, the government pays for the research, therefore the government should pay for the publication of the research. Okay, but the government should not be running the publication of the business, and it shouldn't be, whoever is doing it shouldn't be dependent on government revenue for doing that. It should be essentially private organizations, because that's the only way, private competing organizations, because competition is the only way to ensure innovation. Once it goes into the government, it withers and dies. Sorry, that's what I've seen in all the examples. So otherwise, the Soviet Union would be superpower. So, so you need competition, and you need private competition. So you need the publishers, in my view. Publishers are playing an important function, and they should be private organizations, profit-seeking organizations. I believe in profit-seeking as a model for, and competition as a model for innovation.
Perhaps the closest equivalent that you've described to this sort of aggregation model is Crossref, which is maybe not commercial, but certainly sustainable.
Yes, it can be owned by publishers. I don't have any problem of, if, for example, there is no private organizations that are willing to pick it up as it is, it can be funded by publishers, and they can fund 2 organizations or 3 organizations, and those 3 organizations will be doing different things, and let the best do well, and let there be an alternative. I don't want government involved.
Well, we can't have an interview without talking about Gen AI at least a little bit. So are you using Gen AI? Are you using LLMs?
Is there anybody not using them these days? I don't know. I have a subscription to 2 of them, ChatGPT and Grok. I tend to use Grok a lot more than ChatGPT. I use both of them, but I find Grok better. So yes, I use it on a daily basis, and I use it heavily.
Well, it's fascinating. It's been it's been remarkable talking to you in this interview, for sharing your story, and very heartening to feel that your entire career has been about innovation, and you haven't finished innovating now. So let's look forward to some great more innovations in the years to come. Anyway, thank you very much, Georgios, for your time.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you again.